The travel agency looked like a dream opportunity. Bright office space in downtown Miami, professional staff speaking multiple languages, glossy brochures featuring luxury hotels and tropical destinations, testimonials from satisfied clients on the walls, company representatives attending international job fairs. Everything suggested a legitimate business helping people find employment abroad. Global opportunities. International launched in February 2016 with an appealing mission statement. They connected workers from developing nations with hospitality positions in the United States. Hotels needed staff. Restaurants required experienced servers. Resorts sought seasonal workers. The company promised to handle visa paperwork, arrange transportation, and secure housing. For people seeking better lives, it seemed like the perfect solution. The founder presented himself as a successful entrepreneur with connections throughout the hospitality industry. He gave interviews about bridging labor gaps and creating opportunities, Chamber of Commerce meetings, Rotary Club presentations, immigration attorney partnerships. The business appeared thoroughly legitimate. Nobody questioned the rapid expansion. Nobody suspected what happened after workers arrived. Within 18 months, Global Opportunities International operated in 6 cities across the southeastern United States. Miami remained headquarters, but branch offices opened in Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, New Orleans, and Houston. Each office processed between 40 and 80 applications monthly. The company's reputation grew. International media featured success stories. Government officials praised their contribution to tourism infrastructure. What shocks you more? That hundreds of people voluntarily signed contracts with traffickers, or that the operation hid behind legitimate business licenses for 6 years? Drop your answer below. The recruitment process followed a careful pattern. Representatives traveled to 23 countries across Latin America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and Africa. They attended job fairs. They placed advertisements in local newspapers. They partnered with overseas employment agencies. The pitch emphasized opportunity, good wages, safe working conditions, legal immigration status, career advancement potential. Applicants paid fees ranging from $3,000 to $8,000. The company claimed these covered visa processing, transportation, and initial housing. Many families borrowed money or sold property to afford the fees. They believed they were investing in their futures. The contracts looked official. Everything appeared legitimate. Thousands of people signed. The first warning signs emerged in early 2018. A social worker in Atlanta encountered a young woman who seemed terrified despite holding valid employment documents. She worked at a hotel but lived in overcrowded housing with 15 others. Her passport had been confiscated for safekeeping. She worked 16-hour shifts but received minimal pay. When questioned about leaving, she mentioned debts she couldn't repay. The social worker filed a report with local authorities. Similar reports surfaced across the Southeast. Workers living in cramped apartments, excessive working hours, wages below minimum, threats when people complained, confiscated identity documents, but each case appeared isolated. Different hotels, different restaurants, different cities. Nobody recognized the pattern connecting them until federal investigators began comparing incident reports. According to court documents, FBI Focus began surveillance of Global Opportunities International in August 2018. Agents tracked the company's financial records. They interviewed workers who had escaped. They monitored the Miami headquarters. What emerged was a sophisticated human trafficking network operating behind the facade of a legitimate employment agency. The system worked through calculated exploitation. Workers arrived believing they had real jobs with fair wages. Reality proved drastically different. The company placed them in positions at hotels, restaurants, and resorts that paid global opportunities directly for their labor. The workers received only a fraction of their earnings, sometimes as little as $3 per hour for jobs that should have paid $12 or $15. Housing arrangements trapped workers further. The company controlled their living spaces. Multiple workers crowded into single apartments. Rent costs were deducted from already minimal wages. The math ensured workers could never save enough money to leave. They remained perpetually indebted, perpetually dependent, perpetually controlled. Then they discovered Location 8. Unbelievable. During the investigation, federal agents identified 34 different facilities across 12 states where Global Opportunities housed workers. These weren't just crowded apartments. Investigators found converted warehouses where 50 or 60 people lived without adequate sanitation, basements of commercial buildings holding 40 workers, even modified shipping containers on rural properties where people slept in conditions that violated every housing code imaginable. The scale kept expanding. Agents cross-referenced employment records with immigration databases. They discovered that Global Opportunities International had processed work visas for over 2,000 individuals since 2016. But current surveillance suggested far fewer workers remained in company housing. Where had the others gone? Some had escaped and disappeared into undocumented status, too afraid to report their exploitation. Others had been trafficked to secondary locations when they complained or became difficult to control. A few had managed to contact family members who helped them flee. But investigators identified 890 workers currently under company control. 890 people living in forced labor conditions across 12 states. What most people don't realize is how sophisticated these trafficking operations become. Global Opportunities International maintained detailed records, worker files, housing assignments, transportation schedules, employer partnerships, visa documentation. Everything looked legitimate on paper. They even filed taxes and maintained proper business licenses. The criminal activity hid within systems designed to appear legal. The company had contracts with 247 different businesses, hotels, restaurants, catering companies, event venues, resorts. Each believed they were hiring through a legitimate staffing agency. Some employers never witnessed the workers' actual living conditions. Others suspected problems but didn't investigate deeply. A few actively participated in the exploitation, knowing they received labor below market rates. Financial analysis revealed the operation's staggering profitability. Global Opportunities International generated $180 million in revenue across 6 years. The workers who created that value received approximately $23 million total. The difference disappeared into the criminal network. Owners, managers, facilitators, document forgers. The infrastructure required to traffic nearly 900 people demanded extensive personnel. Here's what investigators found that would change everything. In November 2021, federal agents intercepted communications indicating imminent mass deportation plans. Immigration and Customs Enforcement had scheduled raids targeting undocumented workers at several hotels. Global Opportunities International planned to use these raids to eliminate evidence. Workers would be deported. Their testimonies would become inaccessible. The company would claim they were simply victims of document fraud. The trafficking charges would become nearly impossible to prove. The raids were scheduled for November 18, 2021. FBI Focus had just 11 days to execute a coordinated intervention before 890 potential witnesses disappeared forever. 11 days to gather evidence, coordinate with multiple agencies, prepare rescue operations, secure housing for victims, prevent the traffickers from destroying records or fleeing. Think about what this means. If federal agents had waited even 2 weeks longer to act, the entire operation would have escaped prosecution. The victims would have been deported to their home countries. The criminals would have simply recruited new workers and continued the enterprise. Years of investigation would have produced nothing. The trafficking network would remain operational today. How many victims do you think realized they could escape? Not hoped they could. Not dreamed they could. Actually believed escape was possible? FBI Focus coordinated with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Department of Labor, and Department of Homeland Security for what became one of the largest human trafficking operations in U.S. history. November 7, 2021 at 4:32 a.m., simultaneous operations began across 12 states. Federal agents raided the Miami headquarters, 6 branch offices, and 34 housing facilities. They executed the search warrants at 200. The scope was unprecedented. Over 400 federal agents participated. State and local law enforcement provided support. Victim services organizations deployed counselors and translators. Emergency housing arrangements were prepared for 890 people. Medical personnel stood ready to treat anyone requiring immediate care. Immigration attorneys volunteered to help workers navigate legal status questions. At Miami headquarters, agents seized 14 filing cabinets containing worker records. Computer servers held detailed financial transactions. Safes contained 238 confiscated passports. Investigators found recruitment materials in 17 different languages, training documents teaching staff how to control workers, even scripts for handling complaints or inquiries from suspicious family members. The housing facilities revealed conditions that shocked even experienced investigators. One converted warehouse held 74 people sharing 3 bathrooms. A basement facility had sleeping spaces marked with tape on concrete floors where 43 workers lived without windows or ventilation. Multiple locations showed evidence of physical restraint. Locks on the outside of bedroom doors, boarded windows. One facility in rural Georgia had workers living in conditions compared to livestock housing. 47 individuals faced federal charges ranging from human trafficking to forced labor to visa fraud to money laundering. The founder received a 32-year prison sentence. 6 regional managers got sentences between 15 and 24 years. Office staff who facilitated the conspiracy received reduced sentences for cooperation. Several employers who knowingly exploited trafficked workers faced separate state charges, but convictions represent just one aspect of the resolution. The broader challenge involved 890 victims who suddenly faced uncertain immigration status, no employment, no housing, and in many cases significant debt back in their home countries. Federal authorities worked with victim services organizations to establish a comprehensive assistance program. Every victim received temporary immigration status, allowing them to remain in the United States during prosecution. They qualified for victim compensation funds to address immediate needs. Nonprofit organizations provided housing assistance. Employment agencies helped connect them with legitimate jobs. Medical and mental health services addressed trauma. Legal aid organizations helped some pursue permanent residency through special visa programs for trafficking victims. According to federal authorities, the intervention prevented an estimated 890 individuals from continued forced labor exploitation. It dismantled a network that had trafficked over 2,000 people across 6 years. It exposed complicit employers who enabled the operation. It revealed how traffickers exploit legitimate business structures and immigration systems. The investigation revealed something else disturbing: global opportunities. International wasn't unique. Federal authorities identified at least 37 similar operations nationwide using various covers: employment agencies, cultural exchange programs, agricultural labor contractors, construction crew recruiters. Some remain under investigation today. FBI Focus concluded that labor trafficking networks represent an emerging threat that most Americans never consider. We assume employment agencies are legitimate. We trust that business licenses indicate proper operations. We believe immigration systems prevent exploitation. The case files show how easily those assumptions enable criminal enterprises. The traffickers understood American labor market vulnerabilities. Industries desperate for workers. Complex immigration regulations creating confusion. Language barriers preventing victims from seeking help. Cultural factors making people reluctant to report exploitation. Here's a question that FBI Focus wants you to consider. How many people work in your community right now under trafficking conditions? Not in other countries. Not in abstract statistics. Actually, within miles of where you're sitting, working at restaurants you visit, cleaning hotels where you stay, preparing food you eat. Could you identify? The human trafficking industry generates an estimated $150 billion globally each year. Labor trafficking specifically accounts for $99 billion of that total. Criminal networks have discovered that forced labor provides sustainable profits, with lower law enforcement attention than other trafficking forms. Workers generate value continuously. Demand remains constant because businesses always need employees. And until recently, enforcement focused primarily on sex trafficking. What changed after this case? The Department of Labor implemented stricter auditing requirements for employment agencies placing foreign workers. Immigration authorities enhanced screening protocols for work visa applications. Congress increased funding for anti-trafficking task forces. Law enforcement agencies received training to recognize labor trafficking indicators. Multiple industries adopted certification programs verifying ethical labor practices. But criminals adapt. They create new agency names with new business structures. They develop more sophisticated document systems. They exploit different visa categories. They target different worker populations. The Global Opportunities International investigation shut down one network, but dozens more continue operating. Some might be recruiting victims right now. Federal investigators emphasize 3 warning signs for potential victims. First, requirements to pay large fees before employment. Legitimate employers cover visa and transportation costs. Second, living arrangements controlled by the employer or agency. Workers should choose their own housing. Third, document confiscation for any reason. No legitimate employer needs to hold your passport or identification. The victims of Global Opportunities International faced trauma that extends far beyond their work exploitation. They trusted an organization that betrayed them completely. They paid their savings for opportunity, and received enslavement. They came seeking better lives and found themselves trapped. Many experienced physical abuse. All suffered psychological manipulation. Some witnessed violence against others who tried to resist. Several victims testified during sentencing hearings. A young woman from the Philippines described working 16-hour days at a hotel, living with 12 others in a 2-bedroom apartment, and receiving $300 monthly, while the company charged the hotel $8 per hour for her labor. She calculated she generated over $28,000 for global opportunities across 14 months. She received $4,200 total. A man from Honduras explained how recruiters visited his village promising construction jobs paying $15 hourly. He sold his family's small farm to pay the placement fee. He arrived to find himself cleaning restaurant kitchens for $4 per hour with rent and transportation costs deducted from every paycheck. After 6 months, he had saved nothing. He owed the company $2,000. Leaving seemed impossible. A woman from Ukraine provided the most devastating testimony. She came on a cultural exchange program that Global Opportunities administered. The company promised hospitality training at a resort. Instead, they forced her into domestic servitude at a private residence. She worked 17-hour days cooking, cleaning, and caring for children. She received no pay whatsoever. When she attempted to contact the embassy, supervisors threatened to report her for immigration violations. She spent 22 months in captivity before FBI agents found her during the raid. The judge referenced her testimony specifically during sentencing. He noted that the defendants had exploited people's dreams and desperation. They had monetized human suffering. They had turned immigration systems designed to help workers into mechanisms for enslavement. The 32-year sentence reflected not just the trafficking itself, but the calculated cruelty of deceiving people who sought nothing more than honest work. FBI Focus investigated what happened to the overseas recruiters. Some countries conducted arrests. Others claimed insufficient evidence. Many recruiters simply started working for different trafficking organizations. The international networks that supply victims remain largely intact. They continue operating, targeting different countries or using different covers. U.S. law enforcement can prosecute domestic operations, but overseas recruitment infrastructure persists. This reveals a critical weakness in combating labor trafficking. Federal agents can rescue victims and convict traffickers operating in the United States, but they cannot prevent recruitment happening in dozens of countries simultaneously. International cooperation remains inconsistent. Some nations prioritize trafficking investigations, others lack resources or political will. Criminal networks exploit these gaps, recruiting from jurisdictions with minimal enforcement. The case also highlighted how mainstream businesses become complicit. 247 companies contracted with Global Opportunities International. Federal prosecutors charged 12 business owners with related crimes. Civil lawsuits from victims targeted dozens more. What's the solution? Stronger international enforcement cooperation, enhanced worker protections regardless of immigration status, better monitoring of visa programs, stricter penalties that make trafficking financially devastating. Most fundamentally, addressing the economic desperation that makes people vulnerable to trafficking schemes in the first place. The Global Opportunities International case concluded, but its implications continue. 890 victims began rebuilding their lives. 2,000 others remain somewhere, some still exploited, some escaped but afraid to seek help. Millions more people worldwide remain vulnerable to similar schemes. The investigation revealed how easily criminal enterprises can infiltrate systems designed to help people find work. Here's the final question FBI Focus wants you to answer. What deserves the harshest punishment? The financial exploitation, the physical confinement, or the psychological manipulation that convinced victims they had no escape? Each represents its own horror. The stolen wages, the locked rooms, the destroyed hope. Which matters most? What shocks you most about this case? Was it the scale, the duration, or how legitimate the business appeared? Have you ever used an employment agency for international work? Would you know what warning signs to look for? Share your thoughts in the comments. These conversations matter. They raise awareness. They help protect vulnerable communities. If this investigation revealed anything to you about how traffickers hide behind legitimate businesses, make sure you're following FBI Focus for more stories about criminal enterprises concealed within normal operations. Because the next network might be recruiting in your community right now. The next investigation might prevent someone you know from becoming a victim. Understanding how these criminals operate gives you the knowledge to recognize and report trafficking. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators look exactly like helpful businesses. Sometimes the worst criminals present themselves as opportunity providers. Sometimes what seems like a career breakthrough masks something catastrophic. That's why investigations like this matter. That's why FBI Focus exists. To reveal what hides behind the legitimate facade. To show how close people came to continued exploitation. To demonstrate that federal intervention prevented ongoing suffering. The office in Miami stands empty now. The 34 housing facilities were shut down. The 890 victims received assistance. The criminals faced decades in prison. But somewhere else, another agency is probably recruiting. Another operation is starting. Another group of people is trusting something they shouldn't. That's the reality FBI Focus confronts in every investigation. Rescuing 890 victims matters. Convicting 47 traffickers matters. Exposing complicit employers matters. But the broader fight continues. As long as criminals can profit from human exploitation, these enterprises will exist. As long as people face economic desperation, traffickers will find victims. As long as international cooperation remains incomplete, the Global Opportunities International Investigation achieved something significant. It freed nearly 900 people from forced labor. It dismantled a major trafficking network. It led to policy changes and enhanced enforcement. But it also revealed how much work remains, how many similar operations continue undetected. So, stay informed. Stay vigilant. Verify employment agencies. Question promises that seem too good. Protect yourself and your community. Because the next opportunity that looks perfect might be a trap. And until these trafficking networks are eliminated completely, that risk exists for anyone seeking work abroad. This is FBI Focus, revealing the investigations that protect communities from predators hiding in plain sight. The predators who disguise slavery as opportunity, the operations that exploit dreams and desperation, the criminals who turn hope into bondage, and the investigators who free victims before more lives are destroyed.